All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ole Miss After Dark. Me and Hitch are back here with y'all to preview the Ole Miss South Carolina game coming up on Saturday at 2:30. Big game for the Rebels, obviously, after dropping the SEC opener against Kentucky last weekend in Oxford. Now the Rebels must go on the road and face a South Carolina team that's played pretty well so far this year. They have a couple of injury concerns. But before we get into all of that, Hitch, uh, how big of an ovation do you think Juice Wells is going to get when they do his jersey retirement ceremony up into the Ring of Honor or whatever they have there in Columbia when he steps back on campus?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't imagine it's probably going to be a warm reception
Oh
for
man.
him. Yeah, I don't see that happening, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think Juice Wells is primed for a big game because Lane
Yeah.
is going to try to feed that man. He's going to try to get him to have every moment he possibly can. Full disclosure, I did place a bet yesterday for Juice Wells to catch at least 3 touchdowns at plus 6,900. So we will see how that ends up going. But I think Lane's going to give him every opportunity. Does he get to three? Probably not. But it's going to be fun to cheer it on anyway. I do think he gets the first one, though. First play from scrimmage, Lane's going to take a shot to Juice Wells to try to get in the end zone first play of the game to really set the tone there in Columbia. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Right there with
But
you.
yeah, just kind of looking at though, this is a really interesting matchup though. A lot of strength on strength going to be going on here in Columbia. Ole Miss obviously with the better passing offense, but these two teams are similar in the way they have really good fronts. They can really get after the quarterback, stop the run, and they both want to run the ball at the same time.
Hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup ends up playing out. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that you're probably seeing two of the better defensive lines in college football going to be, showcased
Mm-hmm.
on Saturday. And to be honest with you, like I think that the Rebels may have more to prove than South Carolina when it comes to who's the best defensive line.
Yeah, and just some of the things that I was looking at earlier today. Ole Miss is tied for third in the country in sacks with 18 so far this year. South Carolina is tied for sixth with 14. So these are two defensive lines that can really get after the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
The one difference is Ole Miss has only allowed 10 sacks so far this year, four of them coming last week against Kentucky, obviously, as we know. South Carolina has allowed 16. The offensive line's really struggled to protect either Sellers or Ashford, whoever's been playing uh, back there. So I think that's a big key so far going into this game, which offensive line is going to hold up against the defensive line, give the quarterback time to try to make some plays, along with creating some holes for these running backs to run through because both teams are going to try to ground and pound. We'll get to it here in just a little bit, but Rocket Sanders is listed on the injury report for South Carolina. Uh, Everything I've heard, they're actually not expecting him to play. That could obviously change by the time the game gets going on Saturday, but it seems like people in South Carolina aren't expecting to have Rocket Sanders available come Saturday, which would be a big blow for the South Carolina offense if that were the case.
Yeah, it surely would. I mean, this is him, right? Like, I mean, he gets hurt fairly. He's injury
Mm-hmm.
prone from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me. I'm not scouring really the trades to see all of the news and stuff. And so this is the first time I'm hearing about him being out this game. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right, that would be a big blow, and a tick up for the Rebels. I wouldn't be surprised if he is announced as out that line didn't go up over 10.
Yeah, and also another one worth monitoring. Not sure Lenora Sellers is going to be able to go. They expect him to be able to go. He's listed as questionable on South Carolina's injury report. But if he's not going, and you've got Ashford there at quarterback, that's when you'll really see a spike in that line. Because all you have to do then is focus on the run game, keep him contained. You're not going to be worried about him attacking you downfield any. So those are two things we're keeping an eye on from a South Carolina injury standpoint. Lenore Sellers and Rocket Sanders. One's
Rocket
expected to
Sanders.
play, the other is not really expected to play, but all of that will be sorted out by game time. But looking at some of the numbers here on PFF, it's a really, really balanced matchup here with Ole Miss and South Carolina. The two biggest differences is the pass blocking grade and the receiving grade, and the run blocking grade as well. South Carolina doesn't grade out well run blocking, even though the numbers tell you that they do run the ball really well. But that's almost kind of feels like it's forced. They have to, they have to get those 192 yards a game that they are averaging so far this year. That's another strength on strength that I was talking about earlier today. South Carolina averages 192 on the ground, only gives up 104. Ole Miss averages 216 on the ground and only giving up 46 yards on the ground so far this year. Really, really good job by that Ole Miss front seven so far. And then obviously people in the backfield stepping up to make tackles too if they are able to get to that second level. Ole Miss has been a much better tackling team so far this year than we have been in years past. I know me and you've talked about that a few times, Hitch, on some post-game shows about how much better the tackling looks so far. South Carolina has struggled. They're middle of the pack, maybe even below average in tackling, with a tackling grade of only 53.8 so far on this year compared to Ole Miss's 77.1. And like we said, rush defense, that's going to be a big one. Ole Miss tops in the country, 46 yards per game. That grades out at a 96 on PFF, which is an astronomically high number. This is a 0 to 100 scale. South Carolina with a very respectable, very above average 75.6 as well. Maybe just what are a couple things you're looking for from this Ole Miss offense to try to get things going? Is there one particular thing that you're looking for from Lane Kiffin? And I will also point out, I saw Brad Logan tweet out earlier today on Thursday that obviously he doesn't know who's going to win the game, but from everything he's hearing, this is the most locked in Lane Kiffin team has been since he's arrived in Oxford. They have been locked in that building, coming up with presumably a really good game plan, hopefully a really good game plan. But from everything Brad's hearing, everybody from the coaches on down are really focused in on this game on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I read that same tweet right before we hopped on, but I didn't even need to read that. Lane Kiffin had tweeted in like 4 days, right? Like,
I know. That's all I need to know.
I noticed it after the first day or whatever. I was like, man, I hadn't seen anything on my timeline from him, or so that led me to believe like, oh well, he gets it, right? He gets that he can't be that Lane Kiffin and lose a game like Kentucky, right? So good on him that he recognizes I got to get my house in order before I go back out and start having fun on Twitter. A couple of things in the game. The offensive line, obviously, everybody's talking about that. That's no surprise. But when you look at the numbers, I can't even remember the numbers that you were saying a while ago, but they all sound good for Ole Miss, right? Until you start looking at that strength of schedule and who we've played. And then you start to think, well, what was it? Gave up 10. We've given up how many sacks? 10 or X amount of sacks. 4 of them were last week.
Giving up 10 sacks. We've given up 10 sacks. Yeah, exactly.
4 of them were last week when you get some legitimate competition. So that's worrisome to me that we didn't give up but 6 sacks through the first 4 games. And if I had to guess, I would say that maybe a couple of them were Wake Forest and Georgia Southern. But I don't know. That's worrisome.
Likely,
You've got to get that offensive line figured out. Another thing that I'm looking forward to is as much as I love to see Trey Harris with 11 catches on the score sheet, right? You got to get somebody else involved. We didn't do that at Kentucky. It didn't feel like. Of course, it all comes back to the offensive line because if Dart doesn't have time to look, but for 1, maybe 2 options, then that's who he's going to throw the ball to. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm looking for anything more than what anybody else has already said, but I think that 100% right. I think Lane Kiffin has realized I've got to lock in, get a good game plan. And, I don't know that I like 10 points, but I think Ole Miss goes and wins the game.
Yeah, I actually am liking this line more and more as each day passes. It feels like Ole Miss is really geared up to hopefully go out and make a statement. Now, one thing that's concerning is talking about the 4 sacks we gave up to Kentucky, I don't think it's a coincidence that coincides with that being the only game Jaden Williams has missed so far this year for Ole Miss at left tackle. He's been our best offensive lineman so far. Doesn't look like we're going to have him again this coming up game against South Carolina. Hopefully, we can get him back at some point this year, get him back on that offensive line, along with guys like Caleb Warren. That's guy's played a lot of SEC football that really needs to step in and play. Jerquan Scott's another guy that's got a ton of experience. Jeremy James, another guy that's played a lot of football. Need to get these guys back, get them healthy, get them back in the rotation, because the big talking point going into this year was how deep the offensive line should be, how experienced it is, how much football those guys have played. And we've been losing guys left and right every time you turn around. And we'll look at the injury report right here. Obviously, Cam East is listed as out. Hudson Wolf out. Of course, Logan Diggs is still out. Hopefully get him back at some point this year. Jaden Williams, doubtful. Again, don't expect to see him. And then we get into Lane Kiffin playing his Lane Kiffin games. All these questionable guys. Princely Umanmielen sounds like he's not going to play. It sounded like a high ankle sprain is what somebody told me earlier today. So it doesn't sound like it sounds like he might be out. Don't know that for sure. Haven't seen it reported anywhere. There are people that are way more plugged in than me that I'm sure can get that information. But the questionables, you got Matt Jones is questionable. Micah Davis, that's one I'm pretty interested in because he got his bell rung pretty good last week on that return. Didn't return to the game that I remember noticing. So that'll be one interested to keep an eye on. Lewis Moore is another guy that went out. Don't remember seeing him come back. He's listed as questionable. That's one to keep an eye on. TJ Daughtery, the linebacker's listed as questionable. I haven't heard anything that would make me think that he's not going to be playing Saturday. Again, I'm sure there are people way more plugged in that have more information than I do on that. Same with Trey Harris. He's listed as questionable. Henry Parrish is listed as questionable. J.J. Pegues, Micah Pettis, Jeremy James, Akia Stone, the defensive tackle that's given us some depth and has played pretty well so far this year. Brandon Turnage, guy on that back end that really seems to be coming around, the former Oxford product that transferred in. He's probable, along with Trey Amos, Caden Lee, Chris Graves Jr., the transfer corner from Miami last year. Just a ton of guys listed. Again, outs and doubtfuls. I pay attention to those. Questionables, not so much. That's just a crapshoot for me, and see if they end up suiting up and taking the field on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's one of those things that, it is nice that you do have some depth on places like the offensive line and defensive line. Maybe coming into this season, we thought we had a little more depth than we did. And with guys going down, what seems like left and right. And that's another thing, too, that I want to see. I want to see somebody besides Jackson Dart lead the team in carries. Last week against Kentucky, I think Parrish had 13, Dart had 13, Matt Jones had 3, Ulysses Bentley again had 0. I don't know what the deal is with Bentley. I've seen a few different things. I'm not going to speculate, but what I will say is that when Henry Parrish felt like every time he touched the ball last week in the second half or in the fourth quarter, he came up gimpy or like he had to come off the field. At some point, you have to run him out there and give the kid a chance. And last week seemed like a good time to do it. But I don't know with the injuries we've got. We'll just kind of see how it shakes out. But I trust in Lane and seeing him not on Twitter and not out, doing Lane Kiffin stuff really makes me think that this is going to be a pretty good game plan from him and the coaching staff. Maybe, I don't know. I've seen a bunch of people upset with the play calling with Charlie Weiss. Who knows what happens? But, I think on the field and on paper, Ole Miss is the better team, but
much better.
That's why we play the game.
That's right. That's right. Because we were a better team than Kentucky too, and you saw how that goes. One other stat that I found really interesting between Ole Miss and South Carolina, talking about strength versus strength. So far on the year, both of these defenses in the red zone. Ole Miss has only allowed 3 touchdowns on 11 red zone trips to their opponent so far. South Carolina has only allowed 4 touchdowns on 11 red zone attempts so far this year. So these are defenses that, if you do get into the red zone, when the field condenses a little bit, gets shorter, gets a lot harder to move the ball, and it's damn sure hard to get into the end zone there. They really tighten up and make you kick field goals instead of giving up touchdowns. That and third down conversions might end up being the two stats that determine this game.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the more I look at these numbers, right, you've got South Carolina with, I don't know what it is, but it has to be one of the highest coverage grades in PFF. Yeah. It's very high. So that tells me more that we're not going to be able to rely on those on the passing game, right? We're going to have to be able to run the ball. Now, strength on strength when it comes to defense in the red zone, but I dare to say it may be weakness on weakness when it comes to the offensive side of the ball going into the red zone. And the reason I say that, I don't know the numbers. We may be great in the red zone this year. I don't know. But I do know that a team like South Carolina, with the offense that they try to run with that run-first quarterback in the red zone, is going to struggle probably putting touchdowns on the board because the field gets condensed and it's easier to see. And then the same thing with our side. We do some things in the red zone that make it difficult to score at times too. I think the advantage that we have is we have big, tall receivers that Jackson Dart can throw the ball to. And that may be the difference in the game, is whose red zone offense is better.
Yeah. And also you have to respect Dart so much as a runner as well as a thrower,
Sure.
because he can really make some plays with his legs too, and he drops back there in the red zone. Not that South Carolina quarterbacks can't. Obviously, they can. You're just not as worried about the back end as you are with Jackson Dart and guys like Trey Harris, Juice Wells, hopefully Caden Prescorn.
Right? That's what I was just going to say.
Right.
Get him involved.
Got to start getting him involved, right? So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see, though. A really good matchup here for Ole Miss. One that I think we should take care of business, get back on track, and then you got to get back into the film room and get ready for a trip to Baton Rouge if you're able to pull this one off here on the road. Before we get out of here, though, Hitch, let me get your prediction for Saturday. Give me a score. That way we can determine if Ole Miss is going to cover or not.
Yeah. Well, coming into the year, anybody that has watched us talk, this is the first game that I circled as, a problematic game. Little did I know I was off by a week, right? Like I wasn't, and silly me being too confident in things. Should have known better. But this is one of the games that I circled and thought this is going to be a tough one for Ole Miss. This is the first one where we might, lose this game. Hearing the injury report, looking at the numbers, I think Ole Miss comes out of here with a win. I don't think they cover, though. I might actually be on the Gamecocks if it gets north of two double digits. I think Ole Miss, right, probably 27-21, 27-20 type of score. Like I don't think it's going to be a huge defensive battle where it's like 14-10. But also, I don't know that it will be a shootout either. It's going to be one of those classic SEC games where Ole Miss takes the lead late in the fourth quarter, and South Carolina is going to have to put together a drive to win it, and Ole Miss gets a stop on fourth down, 27-20.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit higher than that. I do think Ole Miss covers. I think the atmosphere is going to get a little quieter after that first drive. Ole Miss is so good at getting the ball, using their scripted plays to go down the field and punch it in the end zone. They've done it every single drive, opening drive this year, even against a really good Kentucky defense like we saw last weekend. I think Juice Wells gets into the end zone, first drive of the game, really ramps that crowd up a little bit. and he's going to be telling them to be quiet, and he's going to be talking his trash and all that to them as he goes back to the Ole Miss sideline. And then the defense comes out, gets a big stop, gets it right back to the offense. At that point, if Ole Miss is able to go down and score again, then things start quieting down a little bit in Columbia. You can settle in a little bit. I'm going to take the Rebels 31-13. Give me the cover pretty easily. I think this is a get-right game for Ole Miss. I think Lane Kiffin is locked in. I think they're going to have a great plan together, and they're going to get in there, get the job done, get juice his stats, get out, and then get ready for Baton Rouge next week.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Where is my phone? Oh, here it is. I was gonna so for Kiffin,
yeah.
What did I send you this morning? Oh, okay. So Kiffin has avoided the big upset for most of his career, except for last week, right? He was a double-digit favorite. He is 56-4 straight up, and then he's 4-0 against the spread in situations just like he's fixing to run into tomorrow. So you may be right. He may come out and get the cover. I don't know if it gets over 9.5. If it gets into double digits, I think double digits is too much. But I think we win the game. Obviously,
yeah.
I mean, you have to win the game. It's one of these like you said, it's more than a get right game. It's almost like I don't want to say an elimination game, but it almost feels like an elimination game in a way.
It's real damn close because if you don't come out with this one, then you have to go on the road and beat LSU, beat Oklahoma at home, beat Georgia at home. You have to win out the rest of the way.
Florida,
at Arkansas. I mean, those are a lot of really tough games, and if you drop this one here, then it's basically curtains for you. Yeah, it's possible you go make a run, don't lose a game the rest of the year. That'd be awesome, but you definitely want at least a little bit of leeway to fall back on if you were to drop one later on in the year. So, gotta have because you got the Rebels do get it.
You got to remember too that once we get to that Georgia game, right? If we win that game, it's not going to look as good as it did last week because they were undefeated. When we get to them, they're not undefeated anymore. So, I mean that just like it makes it even more difficult if you drop this game and then you go beat a 1-loss Georgia team, right? Does 2 losses get you there?
Well, look, that could be a 2-loss Georgia team because I don't have their schedule up in front of me. If I'm not mistaken, they also play Texas before us as well. That's going to be a hell of a game too. Texas and Georgia, right? They're very. It's possible they can lose to Texas. That's not out of the realm of possibilities. Texas is a really, really good team. So if that is before Ole Miss, you could be welcoming a 2-loss Georgia team into the vault, and then you're talking about a team as talented as they are with their backs against the wall as well, too, right? So need to avoid that situation at all costs. Go to South Carolina, take care of business, cover, get out of there, and get ready to head to Baton Rouge to tangle with the Tigers. So that's what we're looking for here this weekend.
Hey, you know what, Dids?
What's up?
55 straight days
of football. It's coming, man.
Or
it's
maybe
coming. College football. No, what? I don't care how you do it because it still exists. College football, NFL football, 55 straight days starts tonight with Troy hosting Texas State. Hopefully, Troy can stay within 14. Hitch is hoping that Texas State wins by at least 14, maybe more. So we're on opposite sides of that one. But I'm sure we will be nice and civil throughout the game.
Always
in our group message. We are. We always root for each other's bets to win, but somebody's losing tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance to Hitch. So I appreciate y'all joining us here for the South Carolina preview. Me and Hitch will be back with y'all again on Sunday. Remember, that show premieres at 12 o'clock Central every single Sunday. We sit down that morning. We record. That way we can get it out to y'all getting out of church or whatever on Sunday. Get in the car, pull up your phone, go to Spotify, Apple, or if you want to put it on YouTube, let play over your speakers, whatever you want to do, and listen to our thoughts of how the game went on Saturday. And also, don't forget to go visit our online store, omafterdark.myshopify.com. You can find all of your Ole Miss After Dark merchandise, including the great Papa Lynn's hot sauce made right here in Ecru, Mississippi. And remember, When you get to checkout, use the promo code SHIP, SHIP. You get free shipping on all orders. So y'all go check that out. Find anything you like, add it to your cart, buy it, help support the show. Me and Hitch would really appreciate it. And we will talk to you guys here on Sunday. Hitch, I appreciate it, buddy. And we'll talk to you soon.
Toddy.
Hi, Toddy.